One of the most unsettling and perplexing unsolved murders in European history took place at an isolated property called Hinterkaifeck in the far-flung Bavarian countryside of Germany. Andreas, a 63-year-old farmer with a bad reputation, his wife, Cecilia, their widowed daughter, Victoria Gabriel, and Victoria's two children, Josef and Cecilia, lived on the property. Maria Baumgartner, a new maid who had just started working at the property on March 31st, 1922, was with them. That evening, an unthinkable tragedy occurred. Andreas Gruber had seen unsettling indicators around the property in the days before the killings. He reported to his neighbors that he had noticed enigmatic footsteps in the snow that led to the home from the neighboring woods, but that no one had come back. Andreas heard strange sounds coming from the attic, like quiet footsteps, but he examined and found nothing. The house keys unexpectedly vanished, which made it much more unnerving. March 31st started off like any other night. Maria Baumgartner, the new maid, had only recently become accustomed to her new position and had no idea that she was entering a nightmare. The family members were enticed out to the barn one by one at some time that evening. It's unclear if they voluntarily stepped outdoors or if the murderer called them out. Once inside, a mattock, a hefty agricultural implement resembling an axe, struck them down. They lay dead in the hay after the killer crushed their skulls with frightful force. 7-year-old Cecilia managed to survive the initial onslaught for a few hours. Her hands included clumps of her hair, indicating that she had ripped it out in pain before she passed away from her injuries. After completing the killing in the barn, the murderer went inside and killed Maria, the new maid, in her bed, and Joseph, aged 2, who was sleeping in his cradle. The same vicious weapon struck them in the head. What transpired next is what makes the case even more terrifying. The killer didn't run away. Rather, they spent days on the farm. The farm animals were fed and cared for as if nothing had happened, and neighbors subsequently reported seeing smoke billowing from the chimney. In addition to eating the family's food and caring for the land, the murderer had lived among the bodies. When the family was not seen for several days, the villagers started to worry. They discovered the disfigured bodies piled in the barn when they went to look into it. Aside from the sound of the animals who hadn't been fed in a day or two, the home was strangely quiet. Police conducted a thorough investigation and spoke with hundreds of suspects, including Andreas Gruber's former co-workers and known adversaries. A dark family secret, rumors that Andreas had an incestuous relationship with his daughter Victoria, and that tiny Josef might have been his child rather than her late husband's, was one of the many potential reasons that were investigated. But no solid proof ever came to light. There is only terror, conjecture, and unresolved issues in the wake of the Hinterkaifeck Murders case. The farm was later destroyed, but the mystery surrounding the perpetrator of one of Germany's most horrific murders remains as unsettling as ever. A series of bleak islands known as the Flannan Isles, located in the dangerous North Atlantic off the rocky coast of Scotland, remained mainly uninhabited by humans. The sole indication of human habitation was a single lighthouse, which stood atop a precipitous cliff and directed passing ships through the raging seas with its strong beam. 3 seasoned lighthouse keepers, Donald MacArthur, Thomas Marshall, and James Ducat, manned it. These soldiers were responsible for keeping the light going so that no ships would perish along the perilous shore. A passing ship observed something odd on December 15, 1900. The lighthouse was dark. The tower had no warning light, which was a very concerning indication. The lighthouse was eerily quiet when a relief crew showed up a few days later to see how the keepers were doing. Everything inside seemed undisturbed, and the front door was locked. The kitchen still had food ready to eat, the table was set, and the beds were made nicely. One peculiarity, though, was that one of the table's chairs was gone. Even worse, one of the keepers had left without enough protection from the icy cold since 2 sets of oilskins, heavy waterproof coats were gone, but the third set was still there. Investigators discovered something more odd outside. There were disturbing entries in the logbook. Marshall had described the island being hammered by a tremendous storm on December 12th. Winds howling, waves smashing against the cliffs, and an all-pervasive sensation of dread. He observed that MacArthur, who was supposed to be tough, had been crying, and that Ducat, the seasoned keeper, had been oddly silent. This was very strange. Why would experienced lighthouse keepers be so terrified by a mere storm? On December 15th, the final log entry simply stated, "Storm ended, sea calm." God is supreme. Nothing after that. Many people don't accept the official account, which was that the men were pushed into the water by a huge wave. Why were the three men outside at the same time? Why had he forgotten his raincoat? Some people think that the keeper's conflicts escalated into violence, which resulted in suicide and murder. Others believe that something completely different, possibly sea spirits, or an unidentified power that lurks in the waters, took them. No keepers now live at the Flannan Isles Lighthouse, which is still in function, but is now automated. One of the most unsettling maritime disappearances in history is the mystery surrounding the fate of the three guys. What started out as a normal traffic incident on England's M6 highway on May 17, 2008, turned into one of the strangest and most unsettling occurrences ever documented. Authorities, medical professionals, and the general public were shocked by the seemingly incomprehensible behavior of two Swedish twin sisters, Ursula and Sabina Eriksson. A BBC film team that happened to be accompanying a highway police unit for a documentary initially recorded the event. Even experienced police were left perplexed by what they captured. It all started when two women were seen by motorway cameras wandering recklessly along the M6, a busy roadway with cars passing by at around 70 miles per hour. The twins were strangely composed when the police arrived, until Ursula rushed straight into traffic. Her legs were crushed when she was struck by a huge truck. A few seconds later, Sabina ran after it and collided with another car. She was launched into the air by the crash, and she hit the asphalt with a terrible thud. Both women survived, which is amazing. While Ursula's crushed legs prevented her from moving, Sabina was remarkably aggressive despite having a brain injury. She fought medical assistants, shouted at the officers, and even hit one of the rescuers. "They're going to steal our organs," she repeated as they held her. Normally, drugs or mental illness would be blamed for such an occurrence, but toxicology reports revealed no evidence of alcohol or illicit substances in their systems. Medical personnel were taken aback since they could not rationally explain their behavior. However, it was not the end of the story. Later that day, Sabina was mysteriously released after being judged stable, while Ursula stayed in the hospital. A few hours later, she was spotted rambling through Stoke-on-Trent, acting amiably toward passers-by while appearing confused. She talked to Glenn Hollinshed, a local, who sympathized with her and offered to let her spend the night at his house. The following day, Sabina abruptly reached for a kitchen knife and repeatedly stabbed Glenn before escaping the house without any prior notice or provocation. Later, witnesses claimed to have seen her running through the streets, covered in blood, barefoot, and continuously hitting herself with a hammer. She struck herself over the head with a chunk of concrete as a car attempted to stop her, but she continued. She eventually leaped onto a busy road underneath a 40-foot bridge. She was severely injured, yet miraculously survived. Even after being taken into custody and facing manslaughter charges, Sabina's actions were still unclear. She was largely unconcerned with the situation and offered no justification for her actions. She was released in 2011 after receiving a term of only 5 years in jail. The fate of the Eriksson twins remains a mystery to this day. Some people think it was an example of shared psychosis, in which the delusions of one sibling might affect the other. Others believe it was something even more bizarre, possibly incomprehensible to humans. Both sisters' whereabouts are still unknown. One of the strangest and most unnerving mysteries in contemporary criminal history is still their case.